Hi everyone and welcome to section 2 of the course. In this section, we're going to be covering the organizational model needed to support product delivery in SAFe, and we'll be providing guidance on how to go about setting that up. In section 2, we'll be covering the following topics. First, we'll be exploring an organizational model from Lean designed around optimizing value creation. Then we'll be looking at value streams and how organizations use value streams to provide products and services to their customers. Next, we'll describe how this model is implemented in SAFe via the Agile Release Train concept. Then we'll look at key roles on an Agile Release Train. And finally, we'll review a checklist for launching an ART. In section 1, we discussed the basic principles underlying the SAFe framework, and specifically we highlighted the lean principle of always specifying value from the perspective of the customer. In the above picture, we see a fairly typical organizational model, which is to have teams of specialists, for example, UI, database, test, and so on, work to create individual components of a product or solution. However, these components individually have little direct value to a customer. So the disadvantage of organizing along these lines is that none of these teams individually creates anything that can be consumed by a customer. Each team creates a component of the solution, which then needs to be integrated with components from other teams before anything of value can be delivered. In fact, these functional organizational structures can impede the creation of value because of the presence of dependencies, handoffs, and resulting delays. The lean approach would be to create teams that are cross-functional, that is, have all the skills to produce something that provides actual usable value. When we adopt this approach, this means that at the end of an iteration, for example, the work of the team can be demonstrated in a meaningful way to users and stakeholders and is therefore amenable to feedback. Feedback makes it possible to make timely adaptations to the product as it is being developed, and in fact often leads to the discovery of the real needs of users. So organizing around value means aligning teams directly with value creating activities versus organizing in functional silos. Now let's talk about value streams. Understanding the value stream used to deliver a product to a customer is a key step in coming up with an organizational design to support that value stream. A value stream can be defined as the set of all actions required to bring a product or service from order received to delivery to a customer. These include actions to process information from the customer and actions to provide the product or service for the customer. A value stream is made up of all the processes, systems, and people needed to deliver the full solution. Businesses have a value stream associated with each product or service they provide, whether they realize it or not. So whether it's selling pizza, providing home loans, or providing health services at a medical clinic, each one of these has an associated value stream. Our goal then is to identify each value creating step in the process and to align delivery teams with those activities versus designing teams around functional specializations. Now let's look at value stream mapping as a tool to assist us with art design. Value stream mapping is a tool from Lean, which can assist us with agile organization design. Value stream mapping involves a number of steps. Step one is first to identify the sequence of activities needed to provide a product or service to a customer. This is simply involves laying out the value stream. For example, manufacturing a product, fulfilling an order, providing a loan, or delivering a professional service. Like we said earlier, all products and services will have an associated value stream. Step two then is to identify the systems or applications needed to support each of these activities. For example, one of the steps in processing a loan application might be to generate a credit score for the applicant using a system that performs that function. Another example might be a custom search engine in an e-commerce system that provides product recommendations based on a user's search queries. The next step three, is to begin to identify the teams responsible for each of these applications or systems. Once we begin doing that, we may begin to see opportunities for refining existing team structures so that we will ideally have dedicated focus on individual activities in the value stream. This does not need to be perfect at this point. The goal is to minimize dependencies and handoffs and generally improve the flow of work across the value stream, or at least make a start in this process. Then step four, once the teams have been identified, we are now in a position to form an ART. An ART is the set of teams needed to develop and support a value stream. At this point, we should have a picture like the one in the slide. And then finally, once the ART is in operation, we must strive to continuously improve the flow of value through it by measurement and improvement. Let's summarize what we know so far about ARTs. So in SAFe, delivery teams are organized into ARTs, Agile Release Trains. An ART is a value stream aligned team of teams with up to around 12 teams maximum. Teams on the ART are standard Scrum teams for the most part, occasional Kanban team. Standard Scrum teams per the Scrum Guide. That is, each team will have a product owner, Scrum Master, and a development team with up to a total of around 10 people maximum on the team. An ART has or should have everyone needed to define, deliver, and operate a value stream. Planning and delivery is performed in fixed time boxes known in SAFe as planning increments or PIs. There are a couple of additional roles on the ART. One is the product manager who owns the overall ART backlog. And then we have a role called the Release Train Engineer, or RTE. Release Train Engineer facilitates all of the ART events and drives continuous improvement. It might be useful to think of the RTE as a ART level Scrum Master. Now let's take a more detailed look at some of the roles on the ART. First of all, the product manager. The product manager owns and prioritizes the ART backlog. They are responsible for what gets built. They work with customers and internal stakeholders to understand their needs and to provide clarity and direction for the delivery teams. Then we have the Release Train Engineer, or RTE. The RTE facilitates all ART events, including PI planning, ART syncs, system demos, takes the lead on impediment removal, and is responsible for ensuring that the organization is continuously improving its performance. The system architect is responsible for defining the overall architecture of the system that supports the value stream, identifies architectural runway needs, non-functional requirements, and system interfaces. Then we have business owners. These are key stakeholders who are responsible for the business outcomes associated with the ART. Now let's look a bit further at the division of responsibility between product managers and product owners and RTEs and Scrum Masters. So on the product management side, the product manager basically leads the art, owns the product vision, product strategy, roadmap, and art backlog, manages the art backlog, manages feature intake and feature refinement, accepts features as complete, and determines, in collaboration with business stakeholders, determines product releases. The product owner leads a team, understands the product vision and strategy, manages the team backlog, clarifies customer needs for the development team, and leads feature decomposition into stories, leads story refinement, manages team backlog and story prioritization, and accepts stories as done. For the release train engineer, the release train engineer facilitates all art level events, including PI planning, art syncs, and system demos, and other events associated with the art. Manages removal of impediments directly or via some escalation mechanism, promotes collaboration across teams to achieve goals, and drives continuous improvement at scale. Scrum Masters, this is the standard Scrum Master role per the Scrum Guide. So coaches the team in Scrum adoption, facilitates all Scrum events, helps the team create high-value product increments in every sprint, removes impediments, helps team improve their effectiveness, and ensures that all Scrum events are positive, productive, and focused on achieving sprint and product goals. Now let's look at the overall art operating events and cadences. Arts operate within fixed length time boxes called PIs, or planning increments. One PI is typically 4 to 6 iterations or sprints, during which the art plans and delivers to a set of PI objectives. At the end of each iteration, completed features are demoed. Each PI concludes with an innovation and planning iteration, the IP iteration, the purpose of which is, first of all, to provide a buffer to complete any unfinished work. Then we have the PI demo event, where teams demonstrate the PI objectives defined at the last PI planning event. And these objectives will be scored by the business owners or business stakeholders. Then after that, we have the inspect and adapt workshop to identify opportunities to improve art predictability and delivery effectiveness. And then, of course, within the IP iteration, we have space for planning the next PI. So PI planning occurs within the IP iteration. And then the next PI begins immediately following the IP iteration. So here is a checklist that will help us confirm that we are indeed ready to launch an art. So first of all, the art design is complete, which means a value stream mapping exercise has been completed to identify those teams needed to support a value stream. Team structures have been adjusted to minimize dependencies, or at least we have begun that process. Team readiness. Teams are staffed and have all the skills and roles. Specifically, we have a product owner and Scrum Master, ideally in each team. Teams need to be able to sprint, that is, be able to plan and deliver working tested software or working product increments consistently. It is important that teams acquire a stable velocity, which means they can use that as the basis of planning and making commitments. So this is an important factor for PI planning and vital for the overall performance and predictability of the art. Art readiness, the art roles of product manager, RTE, and system architect have been staffed and trained for their roles. Key art events and associated cadences have been defined. And when ready, the RTE should schedule the first PI planning event, and the product manager should create an art backlog. Finally, art mobilization has been communicated to the organization. Typically, this might involve a kickoff event to communicate the mobilization of the art. It could be a town hall type of event with all the teams, art leadership, business stakeholders, and other partners. It's important that the mobilization of the art is communicated across the organization. In this lesson, we covered first how to get our delivery teams focused on value creation based on the lean principle of organizing around value. Then we looked at value streams and how they can be used as a way to visualize how businesses create and deliver value to their customers. We looked at value stream mapping as a tool to help design an organization that is better aligned with the value stream, and specifically in our case, an Agile Release Train. We covered art roles and responsibilities, and in particular, the roles of the product manager and release train engineer. We then reviewed the basic art operating cadences and events. And finally, we walked through a checklist that helps us confirm that we've done the basic steps to get an art ready for launch. That concludes our lesson on setting up an Agile Release Train. In the next section, we'll be looking at the art backlog and what goes into creating one and getting it ready for PI planning.